On the night of August 24, 1951, a man in a hospital in southern France threw himself from a second-floor window, shouting that he was an airplane. He broke both legs on the pavement below, stood up, ran 5 meters, and collapsed. In the same hospital on the same night, a postman thrashed in his bed, convinced that serpents were coiling around his arms and burning them. An 11-year-old tried to strangle his mother earlier that day. A young girl screamed about tigers for hours. The local doctor wrote in his notes that it was as if the apocalypse had struck the town. 7 people died that week. 50 were committed to psychiatric institutions. More than 250 were affected. The cause has never been officially established. A declassified COA document references the town by name and instructs that associated files be buried. That is not a legend. That is a documented event in a living French town you can drive to today. Europe does villages well. Church squares and cobblestones, medieval towers and mountain views. The kind of places that end up on travel supplements and holiday brochures. Charming, photogenic, entirely safe. But some of these towns carry a different kind of history. Not the decorative kind, not the kind on the postcards. The kind that sits in official court records, peer-reviewed academic journals, government investigation files, and declassified intelligence documents, quietly contradicting the version that usually gets told. 12 of them, all documented, all verified, all still standing in 2026, and in most cases still unresolved. 12 towns. Let us go through them one by one. Number 1. Pont-Saint-Esprit, France. The name translates to Bridge of the Holy Spirit. The bridge over the Rhone is still standing. The explanation for what happened in August of 1951 is not. Pont-Saint-Esprit sits in the Gard department of southern France, population today approximately 10,500. On August 15, 1951, dozens of residents fell ill with nausea, stomach pain, low blood pressure, and insomnia. 9 days later, the crisis peaked. Hallucinations of fire, serpents, monsters, and animals spread through the hospital wards. 7 people died. 50 were committed to psychiatric institutions. More than 250 were affected. The official explanation was ergot, a fungus capable of contaminating rye flour and causing hallucinations and psychosis. The government identified a local baker. 2 bakers and a miller were arrested on charges of involuntary manslaughter. Then, the objections began. The president of France's Millers Union disputed the ergot conclusion and offered to eat contaminated bread in front of a panel of experts. Multiple subsequent investigations produced multiple conflicting theories. The ergotism explanation has never been definitively confirmed. Among the investigation delegations sent from the nearby Sandoz Chemical Company in Basel was Dr. Albert Hofmann, the chemist who had first synthesized LSD in 1938. At that point, fewer than 10 people on Earth knew LSD existed. Sandoz was working with the CIA. In 2009, journalist Hank Albarelli published a book citing a declassified CIA document reading, Répond Saint-Esprit and F. Olson Files. Hand carry to Berlin, tell him to see to it that these are buried. Frank Olson was the CIA's lead LSD researcher. A 1954 CIA report documented a Sandoz representative telling an agency contact that the Pont-Saint-Esprit secret was that it was not the bread at all. Historian Stephen Kaplan disputes the CIA theory on clinical grounds. LSD takes effect within hours. Symptoms appeared after 36 hours. LSD does not produce digestive illness. He may be right. Nobody officially knows. The cause remains undetermined. The town today sits beside a nuclear power station. Survivors who were children that August are now in their 80s and 90s. Their accounts are being collected before they are lost. Number 2. Poveglia, Italy. 3 miles from St. Mark's Square in Venice sits an island where the Italian government has legally banned all tourists. You can see it from the waterfront. You cannot go there. Poveglia has no electricity, no running water, and 0 permanent residents. This island is banned. It began as a Roman military base in 421 CE, then became a farming settlement. It served as a plague quarantine station from 1379 onward, and it became a mass burial ground through repeated epidemic outbreaks. It operated as a psychiatric hospital from 1922 to 1968. Venetian historians estimate over 160,000 people were buried on the island across the centuries of its use as a plague station. That figure has not been independently verified by archaeological excavation, but it is consistently cited and accepted by the community group that now controls the site. The hospital closed in 1968 with no official explanation ever released. In 2014, the Italian government auctioned the island to reduce public debt. A citizens group called Poveglia per Tutti raised €460,000 from over 4,500 contributors to prevent privatization. After the Regional Administrative Court of Veneto ruled twice in their favor, they received a 6-year concession for the northern part of the island in August 2025. Their goal is a locals-only community park. Tourists are explicitly prohibited from visiting. Massimo Pera, a patron of the group, told CNN that the island was made famous by foreigners looking for something to exploit, and that the memories of the island are steeped in pain. The southern asylum buildings remain outside the concession, deteriorating and inaccessible. Fishermen working the lagoon report finding human bone fragments in their nets near the island. Italian press has documented this as a practical occupational reality. The island is 3 miles from the most visited city in Italy. No one is permitted to visit it. Number 3. Kachtice, Slovakia. The castle ruins above the village of Kachtice look like dozens of similar hilltop sites in the Little Carpathians. Stone walls, a hiking trail, and sweeping views across the region. The village below has approximately 3,900 residents. What happened between that castle and that village from around 1590 to 1610 is one of the most extensively documented cases of serial murder in European history. Elizabeth Bathory de Exed was born in 1560 into the highest levels of Hungarian nobility. She was educated, politically effective, managing large estates alone while her husband fought military campaigns. When Count Nadezhdy died in 1604, her political protection died with him. The killings, according to the 1611 investigation by Palatine Gheorghe Thurzo, had begun around 1590. The victims were women and girls, predominantly servants and peasants from surrounding villages, including Cactiae itself. The formal investigation register named 80 confirmed victims identified by name, physical evidence, and testimony. A document allegedly in Bathory's own handwriting found at the castle listed over 650. The killings went undetected for roughly 20 years because the victims were peasants. The investigation opened only when she began targeting girls from minor nobility. The law responded differently to different social classes, and that cut in both directions. The victims had less standing to pursue complaints. The perpetrator had more protection from prosecution. 4 accomplices were tried and executed in January 1611. Bathory herself was never formally tried. A countess could not stand in the same court as her victims' families. She was confined to sealed rooms and died there in August 1614, unsentenced, while her servants had been burned years earlier. One correction that needs stating clearly. The story that she bathed in the blood of virgins to preserve her youth appears nowhere in the original trials from 1610 to 1611. It was added by a Jesuit writer named Laszlo Tarocci in 1729, over a century after her death, citing no verifiable source. The actual documented record requires no embellishment. Number 4. Wareham Percy, England. 6 miles southeast of Malton in the Yorkshire Wolds, a deserted medieval village sits in the care of historic England. Free entry, ruined church. Information boards cover medieval farming and estate history. What they do not prominently cover is what a peer-reviewed study published in the Journal of Archaeological Science reports in April 2017 confirmed about bones found in a pit beneath a former house foundation. 137 bones, mixed remains of at least 10 individuals, dating from the 11th to the 14th centuries. Originally excavated in the 1960s and stored for decades until modern forensic and isotopic methods made proper analysis possible. Simon Mays of Historic England and Professor Alistair Pike of the University of Southampton led the 2017 study. The knife marks on the bones were concentrated in the head and neck area. In cannibalism cases, cut marks cluster around major muscle attachments. These did not. There was evidence of burning of body parts after death and deliberate breaking of bones post-mortem. Strontium isotope analysis of teeth confirmed the individuals had grown up near Wareham Percy. Not outsiders, local people buried by their own community in a specific and deliberate way. Simon Mays stated in the paper, "The idea that the Wareham Percy bones are the remains of corpses burnt and dismembered to stop them walking from their graves seems to fit the evidence best. If we are right, this is the first good archaeological evidence we have for this practice in England. Medieval communities understood certain categories of the dead as capable of rising and attacking the living. The documented remedy was decapitation, dismemberment, and burning. This is the first English site where laboratory science has confirmed that remedy was actually carried out. The villagers were not afraid of strangers. They were afraid of their neighbors. Number 5. Oradour-sur-Glane, France. On the afternoon of June 10, 1944, a Saturday, SS soldiers from the 2nd Panzer Division Das Reich entered a village in the Haute-Vienne department and killed 642 people. One woman survived. The sequence took approximately 4 hours. Men were separated and taken to barns. Women and children were locked inside the Church of Saint Martin, with the doors barricaded from outside. Incendiary devices were placed inside the church and ignited. One woman, Marguerite Ruffanche, age 47, climbed onto the altar, broke a window, and jumped 3 meters to the ground, while SS guards below shot at her. She hid in a garden until the following morning. Her daughter and granddaughter were among the 247 who died in the church. At the Bordeaux war crimes trial in 1953, she testified that she heard a detonation. The church filled with smoke and flames. People were suffocating and screaming. She said she climbed to the altar and jumped from the window. The 14 SS soldiers convicted at Bordeaux were amnestied by the French government within months. The commanding officer, Major Adolphe Diekmann, died in Normandy 19 days after the massacre. No one who planned or ordered the killings served significant prison time. Multiple historians have examined evidence suggesting the SS targeted the wrong village, that the intended location was Oradour-sur-Varès, approximately 12 miles away. If correct, 642 people died due to a geographic error. Charles de Gaulle classified the ruins as a National Historical Monument in 1946. They have been preserved in their exact post-massacre state ever since. Rusted car frames remain in their 1944 positions. The roofless church shell stands open to the sky. A sewing machine melted into a doorstep is still there. A new village was built 200 meters from the ruins. Descendants of survivors live in it today. Some survivors are still alive in their 90s and still occasionally speaking publicly. They have been making one distinction for 80 years, the difference between coming here to bear witness and coming to consume suffering as content. Number 6. Belmez de la Moraleda, Spain. In August 1971, a human face appeared in the concrete kitchen floor of a private home on Calle Real 5 in this Andalusian village of approximately 2,000 people. The family destroyed it with a pickaxe and relaid the concrete. A new face formed within a week. The mayor ordered excavation rather than destruction. Beneath the house were human skeletal remains, including skulls with missing jaws, buried in abnormal positions, dated to the 13th century. The house had been built over a historic cemetery. The remains were reburied elsewhere. The faces briefly stopped. Then they returned. The Spanish Ministry of the Interior commissioned an official investigation. The Instituto de Cerámica y Vidrio, the government's ceramics and glass institute, analyzed floor samples. Their conclusion was clear: no traces of paint were found at any location. Lead researcher Hans Bender and Spanish researcher German de Argumosa sealed sections of the floor under plexiglass with a local notary as witness. When the seals were removed, the faces had changed configuration during the seal period. The notary certified the changes. That certified documentation has not been satisfactorily explained by the fraud hypothesis. There is a messier later chapter. After Maria Gomez Camara died in 2004 at 85, new faces appeared that Spanish media attributed to fraud by her son. That is probably accurate for appearances after 1990. The original 1971 faces, investigated under an official government commission with a laboratory finding no paint and a notary certifying changes during a sealed observation period, remain officially unresolved. The house at Calle Real 5 still stands. The most famous face, La Pava, is embedded in the wall. The Spanish government spent public money and produced no explanation. That is simply where the record ends. Number 7. Borgvattnet, Sweden. A village of 65 people in the forests of Jämtland County in northeastern Sweden has a more consistently documented haunting record than almost anywhere in Europe. The reason is straightforward. The witnesses were clergy who wrote things down formally. The vicarage was built in 1876. In 1927, Chaplain Niels Hedlund wrote a formal letter documenting an unseen force tearing laundry from a line while he watched from the attic. His successor in the 1930s saw the figure of an old woman in gray in a doorway. He entered the room to speak to her and found it empty. In 1941, a diocese secretary visiting overnight woke at 3 a.m. to find 3 elderly women sitting on a sofa staring at her in the dark. She turned on the light. They remained visible, though they appeared more blurred. She checked the clock and pinched her arm to verify she was awake. They sat there until morning. In 1945, Chaplain Eric Lindgren was thrown from his rocking chair twice by an unseen force and never attempted to sit in it again. He kept a written journal of subsequent experiences across 2 years. In 1981, a priest named Tore Forslund was specifically dispatched to exorcise the vicarage and remove its supernatural reputation from the surrounding district. He left the Church of Sweden entirely within a year. He cited a dispute with the cathedral chapter. He did not succeed in removing the phenomena. These accounts span 5 decades of Church of Sweden clergy who had no commercial motive to fabricate. The vicarage is now a bed and breakfast, open May through November. Guests who survive the full night receive a certificate of bravery. The rocking chair is on display. Number 8. Pluckley, England. The landlord of the Black Horse pub in Pluckley, Kent, worked there for over 30 years. He says he personally witnessed nothing unusual in that time. He also stopped closing the pub alone years ago because staff refused to. He told journalists his policy in 3 words: "I keep the lights on." Pluckley sits 15 miles from Ashford in rural Kent, population approximately 1,200. The 1989 Guinness Book of World Records listed it as the most haunted village in Britain, citing 12 to 15 named apparitions with specific documented locations. The entry was later removed. The reputation was not, because the Guinness listing was never the source of it. Parish records identify the Red Lady as Lady Deering of the Deering family, who owned the estate for 3 centuries. She was searching the churchyard of St. Nicholas Church for a stillborn child buried there. The Screaming Man haunts Deering Woods, where police have investigated unexplained noise reports without finding a source, and where dogs brought by investigators have reportedly refused to enter certain clearings. The Highwayman reappears at the road junction locals call Fright Corner. A schoolmaster who hanged himself from a specific tree near the playing fields is named in local testimony going back centuries. Pub staff report glasses breaking in locked rooms, cold spots moving through the bar, and the smell of tobacco in areas where smoking has been banned for years. Several longtime residents have given press interviews saying they find the reputation embarrassing and have experienced nothing. Both groups are telling the truth as they know it. The consistency of the accounts across centuries of independent witnesses with no connection to each other is either evidence of something that cannot be explained or evidence of how powerfully a specific place can hold a specific story. Both interpretations require taking the record seriously. Number 9. Krakow, Italy. In the Basilicata region of southern Italy, a complete medieval town sits empty on a ridge, not ruins in the conventional sense. An intact urban structure, streets, church, Norman Tower, houses, piazza, all standing, nothing in any of it. The 1,800 residents of Krakow were evacuated in 1963 after a major landslide made the ridge officially uninhabitable. They relocated to a settlement called Krakow Peschiera in the valley, approximately 1.5 kilometers below. They were told the move was temporary. Subsequent damage from a 1972 flood, the 1980 Basilicata earthquake, and a 2010 rockfall left the site permanently classified as a high geological risk zone by the Italian Ministry of Civil Protection. The clay and sandstone composition of the ridge was never stable. The instability that eventually destroyed the town's viability had been present in its foundations for centuries before the critical failure. The town was always built on ground that would eventually give way. From the valley settlement of Krakow Peschiera, the abandoned town is clearly visible on the ridge. The Norman Tower is there. Nothing moves in it. The Passion of the Christ was filmed here in 2004. Quantum of Solace used it in 2008. Multiple Italian and international productions have followed. A complete, authentically deteriorating medieval ghost town with intact architecture is difficult to replicate on a set. The living community of displaced residents and their descendants in the valley has not benefited from that filming revenue in any structured way. The abandoned town generates income. The displaced people below watch it do so. Number 10. Bedburg, Germany. In 1589, hunters near the town of Bedburg tracked a large wolf, cornered it, moved in for the kill, and found a local farmer named Peter Stumpp standing where the wolf had been. Stump's left hand was missing. The wolf they had tracked had lost its left forepaw in an earlier encounter. Under torture on the rack, Stumpp confessed to the murder of 16 people, including 13 children, to cannibalism, including eating the brain of his own son, and to a 25-year campaign of crimes carried out while greeting his neighbors, normally in the streets of Bedburg. This confession was obtained under torture. Neither modern historians who see Stumpp as a genuine serial killer, nor those who think the trial was politically useful to the newly installed Catholic regime after the Cologne War, dispute what followed on October 31st, 1589. Flesh was torn from his body in 10 places with red-hot pincers. Limbs were broken with an axe head. He was beheaded. His body was burned. His daughter and his mistress were flayed and strangled beforehand and burned alongside him. His severed head was mounted on a pole with a model wolf figure and 16 strips of wood representing his alleged victims. The Archbishop of Cologne attended the execution, which was unusual for a routine criminal proceeding, and historians have noted this as suggesting the event served as political spectacle. The illustrated broadsheet documenting the execution circulated across Europe within months. 2 copies of a 1590 London pamphlet survive, one in the British Museum and one at Lambeth Library. The case is independently corroborated by the personal diary of Hermann von Weinsberg, a Cologne alderman who recorded events contemporaneously. The Stumpp trial is the most evidentially grounded werewolf case in European history, precisely because it was documented simultaneously by multiple independent sources across multiple countries. Number 11. Muscham Castle, Austria. In the Lungau Valley in Salzburg province in the Austrian Alps, a private medieval castle is accessible by appointment only. The Wilczek family have owned it since 1886, and they have maintained it with unusual candor. The original instruments of torture used in criminal proceedings conducted from this site are still in the collection, available for historical study. The trial records are in the archive. From 1675 to 1690, the Zauberer Jackal witch trials were administered from Muscham under the authority of the Prince Archbishopric of Salzburg. A young man accused of leading children in diabolical practices across the Lungau region sparked an investigation that expanded rapidly. Estimated executions were between 130 and 200. The accused were predominantly children, teenagers, and itinerant poor people with no community connections to speak for them. The youngest were approximately 10 years old. The pattern in the records is not complicated. Those with no one to advocate for them were most vulnerable. Having no stable community meant having no witnesses. Having no family connections meant no political inconvenience for the court. From 1715 to 1717, the same castle administered werewolf trials after cattle deaths were attributed to shape-shifting humans. Multiple individuals were executed for alleged lycanthropy. Real wolf attacks on livestock were documented in the region during the same period. The 18th century legal framework treated transformation into a wolf as a recognized capital offense. The Lungau region today holds annual Perchten festivals in which participants wear grotesque animal masks representing shape-shifting figures. The same cultural imagination that produced the werewolf trials still produces the festivals, 3 centuries later, in the same mountains. Number 12. Caneto di Caronia, Sicily. In December 2003, a fuse box caught fire in a house on Via Mare, the single main street of a coastal village in northern Sicily with fewer than 150 registered residents. Other appliances caught fire in that house and in neighboring homes. In February 2004, the Italian state electricity company, Enel, disconnected power to the entire village. The fires continued, affecting devices not connected to any power source. The Italian government formed an interdisciplinary investigation that included the National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology, the Italian Army, the Italian Navy, the National Research Council, and NASA physicists. Total government expenditure on investigations was over 600,000 euros. During the investigation, with power fully disconnected, one scientist personally witnessed an unplugged electrical cable spontaneously burst into flames while he was observing it. That detail appears in the official documentation. Fires resumed after residents returned. In 2007, a second evacuation was ordered. A preliminary government report described not man-made electromagnetic emissions reaching between 12 and 15 gigawatts. The coordinator called the findings preliminary. No follow-up report was ever published. The fires returned in 2014. There were 18 episodes in 48 hours. A man walked away from his parked car for a few minutes, returned for something he had forgotten, and found the car fully engulfed in flames. In 2015, a man named Giuseppe Pezzino was arrested for the 2014 fires, charged with setting them fraudulently to claim appliance replacement money. That arrest is often described as resolving the entire case. It does not. Pezzino was charged only for fires set in 2014 for profit. He was never charged for the 2003 fires when power was disconnected and a scientist saw an unplugged cable ignite. These were different events with different evidence in different time frames. The original 2003 fires remain officially unexplained. Via Mare remains largely uninhabited as of 2026. No final report establishing a cause was ever published. 12 towns, all of them documented, all of them still there. Pont-Saint-Esprit never received an official explanation, and the CIA files were reportedly ordered destroyed. Poveglia is legally closed to outside visitors by court order as of 2025. The zombie prevention science from Warren Percy sits in a peer-reviewed academic journal published in 2017. The faces in Belmez are still embedded in the wall of a private home in Andalusia. The investigation files on Caneto di Caronia were never formally closed because no sufficient cause was ever established. Oradour-sur-Glane has been preserved in the exact state of its own destruction for 80 years, and the people who live beside it have been making the same distinction for all that time between bearing witness and treating mass death as content. If you have been to any of these places, if you live near one, or if you know something the official record does not, leave it in the comments. The most useful information this channel receives comes from people who actually live with these histories from the inside. Subscribe now. The next video covers the European villages that vanished overnight without warning or explanation. One of them ceased to exist in a single afternoon. By morning, the only sign anything had ever been there was the smoke.